The preamble of the 1995 Constitution does recognize that our history has been characterized by constitutional instability. And perhaps rightly so. You look at the process through which the 1962 Constitution was formulated. There were so many conferences that were held, Marlborough and Lancaster. You recall the events leading to the 1966 Constitution process. You remember what happened during the promulgation of the 1967 Pigeonhole Constitution. Then later on to what we have currently today, 1995 Constitution, and how the CA was constituted among other issues therein. So, and just not so long ago, we had the Constitutional Affairs Minister, the Honorable Norbert Mao, saying that it's about time we had constitutional reforms in this country. And among his proposals were that we need to, for example, review the issue of term limits, among other proposals. So today, the Youth Roundtable convenes to discuss, do we need constitutional reforms? And if so, what are those reforms? But also, is it constitutional reforms or state reforms? We shall discuss that much more later. Then in part two, we shall look at the emerging politics in the Republic of Kenya. You know that in this region, Kenya has at least portrayed itself as a leading democracy in the region. So when such things begin to happen, we then ask ourselves, where does that leave the democracy of the country, but also in terms of the progress of the region? Viewers, to put all this into perspective, is a panel of immaculate young people that it's now my honor to introduce to you, and in no particular order. From the Alliance for National Transformation, and that is the National Coordinator of the Youth Wing, that is Nelson Agaba. Nelson is also a lawyer, and he joins us here, not for the first time, but for many other times. Nelson, karibu sana.
Thank you. Thank you also, viewers, for hosting me here.
You had been lost. Where have you been?
I have been around,
sure,
practicing the law here and there, trying to survive within the environment that is very harsh.
We'll be back from Serere.
Yeah, Serere was tough. As you saw, I survived an arrest by the RDC from Parisa in the names of Majid. I don't know where the powers he had to arrest me. He got them from, but by and large, I am here by God's grace.
And we're happy to have you.
Most obliged.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next to Nelson is a first-timer on the show. That is John Baptist Ouma. He is also an attorney at law, meaning he's a lawyer, but also a youth activist. JB, thank you for sparing the time to be here.
Thank you so much, Comrade Kidega. The pleasure is absolutely mine to be here on Civic Space. It is a wonderful platform that I think when we voice out ourselves, regardless of our political affiliations, it's a good agenda. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Wow, thank you.
The pleasure is mine.
Thank you for being here. Yes, the only lady on the show amongst four gentlemen is Darren Namatovu. Darren is a human rights defender, but also I know that she's a founder of Phonics Children Foundation. Darren, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much for having me, Kidega. It's a pleasure being here.
All right, how do you feel being among these very smart, articulate, able gentlemen?
I feel like energetic. I feel like I can have all of them all at once.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Viewers, please don't misconstrue that. Next to Darren and next to myself is a gentleman from Liantonde district. He's a youth leader therein, but also is a student of law at Kampala International University. Ezra Nuwahoora. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you for sparing the time.
I thank you for the invitation. As they have told you, I'm called Ezra Nuwahoora, student of LLB at Kampala International University. Maybe you didn't mention that is the leading private university in this country. And a happy youth from the Liantonde district.
Happy youth.
I like.
I'm the happiest, maybe.
Okay.
But another thing I can tell you, I'm affiliated with an organization called UPADEF, Young Pan-Africanist Development Foundation. This with main three things: think tank, youth bank, youth incubation center. And I think if you have those cores, you face this situation in Africa.
Okay, very interesting. We shall explore that much more. Nelson Agaba, let's just begin with you. For the benefit of the viewer out there and the listener, just paint for us a picture about our constitutional history. I have made an attempt, but not in depth. Let's evaluate the circumstances under which we find ourselves having about 4 constitutions within a period of just 60 years.
Thank you, Kidega and viewers. Once again, my name is Agaba Nelson, the National Youth Coordinator of the Values-Based Political Organization, and that is Alliance for National Transformation. And as requested by our moderator this afternoon, our history, our constitutional history, some people look at it as from 1962. You mentioned of the Lancaster and the conferences that we had prior, the independence part. But previously we had the colonial rule. Before the colonial rule, we had the federal kingship system where we had Buganda, we had Ankole, we had Bunyoro, and that was the system then. Then colonization came in 1894 until we saw the 1900 Buganda Agreement that ushered in the British protectorate in our country, Uganda, which now took us up to 1962 when we gained our independence. But we also saw in 1957 emerging of new our political parties, the UPC, the Uganda National Congress, the UNC of Uganda. Then we had our first attempt in 1962, having the Kabaka Mutesa as the first president of our country, Uganda, under Kabaka Yeka. Then Obote coming in as prime minister, then the first executive prime minister. Issues came up, disagreements came up within the camp between UPC and the Kabaka, the Kingdom of Buganda. 1966, you saw what we call the Pigeonhole Constitution. And those who don't know the Pigeonhole Constitution, one morning, members of Parliament woke up and there is what we call the pigeon. So they had to find a document there. It was not meant for them to discuss, but to endorse. It was short-lived. 1967, a new constitution came in, declaring Uganda a republic. 71, unfortunately, while Obote was away in Singapore for the Commonwealth Conference, Idi Amin takes control of the state. I didn't see Obote come back in Uganda. He just had to take his way, in Tanzania. 79, with the help of Tanzanian forces and Uganda forces, Amin is again tripled. The Constitutional Commission comes in, then we are having 1880 election being organized, which some people even today, it is on record that they contested it, saying it was unfair, it was irregular, there was so much rigging, and we saw a number of fronts, the Kahira front, we had the Obote and Tito Okello Lutwa, fighting to ensure that the will of the people is respected. So in summary, we have now a regime, National Resistance Movement, then which was National Resistance Army, which had its operations in the Ruwero Triangle, the bush, taking over government in 1986 with a very, very articulate, robust document, the 10-point program. It comes in, they sit. 1988, they articulate an issue of having a new constitution. They form a commission which had now to do national...
Is that the Ode Commission? No, Ode was human rights.
That was human rights. That was a commission.
Odoki?
There was a commission
Odoki.
that led to maybe
Odoke Commission, yeah.
That
But
led,
proceed, yeah.
yes, that led to people now, the commission had to make a cross-country making consultations about, you know, to share with the people on how they would wish to be governed. Through the Constituent Assembly, the constitution was put together, and in September 1995, it was adopted by Parliament. So that's where we have the 1995 Constitution as of today, which has been amended in a span of, since 1995, it has been amended over 4 times, if I may say. We see it being amended.
No, just before we go to the amendments,
Yes.
just let me put a full stop right there.
Yes.
But thank you for that history, very articulate. JB, in between all these constitutional reforms, or in between all these constitutional regimes, we have had legal notices in between. You know that we had legal notice number 1 of 1971, of 1979, and 1986. So, I don't know, as we evaluate our constitutional history, for example, what role have these legal notices played? Have they been done just to fit into the Hans Kelsen theory that makes revolutions and perhaps popular overtake of government legitimate? So I don't know. Just give us your own perspective regarding our constitutional history, perhaps the parts that he has missed out, but also as you evaluate the aspect of legal notices.
Thank you so much, Kidega. And as Comrade has been articulating his analysis, thesis, I agree with him in most aspects. And I love the fact that he emphasizes that there was a certain consultation when the current government was coming into play.
Yeah.
I don't want to dispute the fact that maybe that in the previous ones, they were not there. I don't want to dispute that. But that gives a certain life that the current government had intended to bring into play.
Yeah.
So coming about with such a kind of a constitution, I think it is a people-centered constitution. It is a constitution that was breathing another life into the citizens of this country. Yes, we had notices, we had lots of diversions maybe before that in regards to what should really be input into a constitution, but I think it was a good idea by the National Resistance Movement to make such a consultation, a rich consultation, to bring into every person's idea into play. So I agree, but then we realize that it being a living document, there is an article that provides for change, for amendment, for adjustment. And I think anything living has certain mishaps that can come about. You can be normal today, you can be sick tomorrow, you may need prescriptions to put you into normalcy, you know. So amendments are necessary to add life and to continue moving a certain rule into order. And as with the discussion continues, maybe we shall agree or disagree on certain reforms that we really see that maybe were necessary or that were not necessary. So, and that any kind of government has its ups and downs. But maybe we have to look at, where do the ups outweigh the downs, or do the downs outweigh the ups? But in the same regard, in what time frame? In what time frame is this being analyzed? So agree with me that we have a beautiful and a wonderful constitution as per now. Though why I say this is because even Kenya, which we are going to be analyzing its politics, borrowed a certain consultation from the Ugandan constitution, 1995 constitution. And given such a wealthy and a rich country in East Africa, having an idea to borrow a certain constitution, I doubt you'd want to borrow something that has gotten terrible, something that is not good. So I think our constitution, other factors have been constant, comrades. I think it is a wealthy constitution.
All right, just to interrogate one comment that you've made, is the aspect of consultation. I'll tell you that even in prior to 1962, we had these Lancaster and Marlborough conferences.
Yeah.
So how different was the 1988 consultation from the one that happened, for example, in Lancaster? Because in Lancaster, we had the bench workers going there, we had the the Apollo Mutonoboto is going there, and many other leaders from Uganda. So how different were those consultations?
Any government or in bringing about a certain reform, there ought to be consultations.
That's right.
But then I can make a consultation understanding loopholes that can make my consultation weigh either much or impose it on people that I have made a consultation, but in reality maybe it was for your own interest. So I think having a massive consultation, and I will try to bring us back, try to relate those the conference that we've talked about to the consultations that were specifically made by the current government. I think they were good consultations because they ran out through the country. They ran out through the country and people's interests were put on board.
Yeah. Wow, thank you. Darren, at the center of constitutionalism is the aspect of justice and human rights. You are a human rights defender. As we evaluate our constitutional history, how has the aspect of human rights evolved? Because now I know that we have an entire chapter, chapter 4, which is a Bill of Rights in the current constitution. So, and you can go way back as what he tried to hint on, the colonial time, the aspect of human rights and the violations that happened therein. Because you know that the UK celebrates or used to celebrate the Magna Carta Day. So, but they used to do so, but their colonies were not celebrating this particular day. And yet the Magna Carta was, in fact, a document that was espousing the aspect of human rights, liberties, freedom, and things like that. So you can see that our human rights history has been very turbulent.
Yeah.
But just in your own words, as we evaluate our constitutional history, the aspect of human rights, but also your general comments regarding the history. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kidega. I think in the aspect of human rights, we understand that the Constitution has really been amended very many times, and we've seen what happened, what was happening in the colonial time until now that we got our own Constitution in 1995, and then we had maybe to start amending it, but then we still see loopholes in human rights. So maybe the main question would be why? Because we've had all these amendments, but still we are seeing that there are human rights violations even up to now. There's still very many that are really coming up. So maybe it's a question of if the amendments we do not support or cater for the human rights section, because right now the main thing that is the main conversation, the main reason of this conversation is the fact that there are very many human rights violations, and we think maybe if a constitutional reform maybe could be the solution, but then it's a question of what we need to do. It's a question of what is happening. What are we doing right? What is not maybe being done right in the fact that when we are trying to amend the Constitution, maybe human rights are left behind, because even we were saying the colonialism, the monarchy, the white people, they're ruling us, and maybe we do not have our freedom. But even before they left us, before they left us, we are still the same. I feel like there's progress, but I feel like human rights are not really given the center of attention they deserve. And I think it's a question that I would leave open to everyone else: is what are we not doing right in terms of reforms, in terms of amendments, and all the things, the amendments that we've done? How are we protecting human rights?
Yeah, because what you ask is a fundamental question. And just to attempt to respond to you is that I don't think there's been any amendment in terms of Chapter 4 for as long as it has been put there. So it means the issue could be around enforcement, because the provisions in Chapter 4 are, I don't know, meticulous.
They have made acts of parliament to make a bypass.
Acts of parliament.
Like, yes, we have seen POMA, Public Management Order Act, which came really now to
Section 8.
Yeah, to do away with what the Constitution says, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. We have seen the recent bill, the Computer Misuse Act, and all those draconian laws that have come. Not that not in a way of a direct amendment, but trying to absorb the actual powers the Constitution gives and rights gives to the
Ouma,
Ugandans.
just Ezra, I'm coming to you. Ouma made the statement that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So any other act of parliament, for as long as it contravenes with the Constitution, it should be.
We have seen the POMA, maybe for the record, you will know that the Public Management Order, some sections were annulled and declared unconstitutional.
That was the Mwanga Kivumbi case?
Yes, the Mwanga Kivumbi case versus Attorney General. But police has continued to do the illegal enforcement of a null and void section that you have to seek permission. We have seen that. So, and she was mentioning something that what are we not doing right? The question goes back to the leaders we have. There is no goodwill whatsoever with the leaders in this regime to ensure that we have articulated documents. We are going to talk about the reforms. Actually, when we're talking about the reforms, we have so much. Probably I can agree about restorement of term limits. For the age limit, it may not be a question to me for now, because you can be a thief at 80, you can be a thief at 20, you can be a thief at 25.
It's about tomorrow.
It's about the moral value question of individuals. And as Alliance for National Transformation, that's why our fundamental factor is to change the political culture of this country, to ensure that we have good people of values at the center of governance. Everything raises and falls on governance, which is leadership. So we need to look at when we have a country that does not respect key fundamental principles of good governance, accountability, respect of human rights, transparency in the way they do things. All that, when it is not that, equality before the law, fairness. So when it is not, we have it in our laws. We have it.
Okay.
But there are no leaders of goodwill to respect what is written. So what we need, the reform, it is the heart reform of the leaders. The heart, the values of the leaders. If we had the same people in government today, and today, by God's grace, they wake up when they are reformed people in their hearts to do what is right, to respect the law. The electoral reforms we are talking about. We have all the laws well stipulated. Actually, Uganda is among the country that has good set of laws.
Thank you, Nelson.
But the challenge we have got is the implementation and follow what the laws state. So
thank you.
That's my take.
Thank you. I want to bring in Ezra. Ezra, as we discuss our constitutional history, important to note is the fact that we have had a checkered pattern regarding whether we are a multi-party dispensation or a single-party state or a movement system, because you will recall that I think the 1967 Constitution abolished political parties.
Yes.
So then the 1995 Constitution sort of restored them, but they were in abeyance until the locus classicus case of the now late Paul Kawanga Smogere that brought in the multi-party dispensation. So as we evaluate our history in terms of the Constitution, could you share a picture for us regarding the multi-party dispensation? Single state, multi-party movement, how has it been like?
Thank you, Comrade Kidega and other comrades. I thank the comrade for giving us the history about the Constitution. But what I can put on to the viewers and the audience is that multi-party system, I think it started even in the inclusion of kingdoms. Because if you can recall, as he was saying, like 1902, Uganda wanted a federal state on its own, not even including other kingdoms. But I think Obote thought it right to have Uganda as one,
a unitary
and
state.
We call it a republic.
But he abolished kingdoms in 1966.
Like what I'm trying to say is that when he mentioned of 1900 Buganda agreement, Buganda being it superior, it made some other kingdoms not to look as if they are not so inclusivity in developing Uganda or to have Uganda at once. But what I can tell you is that having multi-party in Uganda, it was a long way through the kingdoms. It wanted to participate, wanted to anticipate, wanted to be superior than the other. So it
Maybe
started.
information.
Just hold up. Just allow me to first
It
build this
started
point.
a long way ago, but forming those Kabaka Yeka, but yes, he abolished them because at that moment he thought he had disagreements with the Kabaka Yeka, with the king of Uganda, because of his ambitions, becoming the prime minister and the president of Uganda. But what I can say, if you borrow the knowledge from the Repaganus clause and the reception clause in 1902 and 1920, those laws were not, I think they ushered more to have the laws of UK in this country that even created the space to have new laws that allowed multi-party in this country. Then if I can come to this regime that brought this constitution that we are following, it sought it very clear to have them because of the chaos that happened, because of the demand. He mentioned that they made consultations before the promulgation of the 1995 constitution. So when they made the consultation and they saw what happened, you all know what happened after Amin took over power. It was a decree. We know what Pigeon Hall did. So this government bringing in multi-party system, I think that's why we are here, and even we are sharing the same platform. Maybe we are going to disagree on at a certain moment, but it gave us a table to disagree and agree for the foster and development of our country. And if I'm to, I see that you have a burning issue, but what
it is just information.
it is okay. But what I can tell you, the shadow multi-party system, from the other time I see it, the fighting power against kingdoms. By then I consider it as kingdoms because maybe the other party for Uganda, the other party for Bunyoro, they had that part and they had fighting schedule like we want to be superior, we have to sign this and this one has to be in Uganda. So I think the multi-party part, because we saw that after Buganda agreement, we had those for Kabaka Yeka forming with Buganda, we had Kabaka Yeka with Obote. You see that multi-party started from that time, as he was telling you that from 1957. So it started from kingdoms, if I can tell you that. If I address my mind very well, it started on the participation of kingdoms. And even when you were saying of Lancaster, those consultations, those were the representatives of some of the kingdoms and the parties. So that is my take on the multi-party system.
Yes. Just a comment.
Yes.
I want to bring in Ouma, so just make a comment.
All right. I just want to make information to my comrade and also to the viewers that one, in Uganda we do not have kingdoms recognized to take part in politics. That's number one. Number two, the history as of today, the multi-party dispensation came. You need to know that in 1997, there was a consultation where they said, look, they wanted a multi-party system then, 1996. Then they agreed on consensus that let us have a one movement system run for 3 years. Then after the 4 years, we can again make a referendum on whether people will have to stay under one movement system or multi-party. Now, in 2000, there was an attempt that was made, and maybe few know or don't, In 2000, they amended again, saying let the movement system stay. That's what prompted Paul Kawanga Semogerere to file in a case, Kawanga Semogerere versus Attorney General, that challenged the multi-party system, the movement system. It is until 2006, the official 2006 elections, that now the multi-party started. So as far as the term multi-party system of governance started officially in Uganda in 2006.
Yes.
Up to date. So that's
Yes,
why you see
yes.
in 2000, in
My comment,
2001,
the thing is,
we saw Dr. Kano Kizza Besigye running, you know, under that frame of reform
Reform
agenda.
agenda.
And,
agenda.
and these other coalitions that came and failed. So we need to be very, very clear.
Maybe
on that.
what you didn't
Just
get
in 1
me-
minute.
Yes. Me, I was shedding the light on how those leaders participated in different umbrellas of kingdoms. They had different agenda, though it came after the promulgation of this constitution, and it came after elections of 2001 and 2006. But before ago, long time ago, they had different agendas or through the different leaders of kingdoms. That was my point.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Point made. JB, now let's begin to discuss the prospects of constitutional reforms here. And if you've read a book by Dr. Businje Kabumba, he makes an argument that the basic structure doctrine of our constitution has been altered with. That when you remove a provision like, for example, term limits, then you have a lifetime presidency, then even the issues of human rights cannot be enforced, because enforced by who? You see, even the issues of maybe independence of institution cannot be enforced because you've affected the basic structure on which the constitution was built. So what is your opinion regarding basic structure doctrine of our law?
I love the heat of the argument from my colleagues here. And just before, prior to that.
Of course, your comments,
Yeah,
feel free.
Yeah. The current government that could be criticized by one of us or all of us is the very government in which the constitution it brought onto board, we are still operating.
Yes.
Even prior to multi-party dispensation, it is the government, the current government, that thinks it right to bring into multipartism. And that is why, after the case of Paul Mwanga Simogere, 2006 is still operating under the constitution that was brought by the current government. And the fact that it is now a multi-party dispensation, I think we need to give credit to the government because it gave it room to operate.
It has turned to be a selection.
Yeah. Now, getting back to the fact
It is operating.
Getting back to our issue. The issue of human rights, the issue of restructuring or causing breaks of making certain critical amendments in the constitution, I would agree that they can, in one way or the other, affect how these rights or any other form of structures can be well managed. But then still, it's still the very constitution that provides for amendment in the event that maybe a system sees it right to amend for the interest still of the people. Now the issue is what kind of implementation or how is it being implemented. We have been talking about the Public Order Management Act, how it came about, and then the fact that it is targeting a certain group of people. But then I want to make mention of this, that in our discussion, it is all about the struggle for power. Now, if there is struggle for power, if there is a struggle for power must come with a certain cost. We must agree to that. It comes with a certain level of sacrifice. Now, if the current government made that sacrifice, and at that sacrifice, other people come about to critique, to demean it, but then they're not making the other sacrifice that the government did, that they can do. You get?
So are you
can they make a certain sacrifice?
Because the sacrifice they claim, just a moment, if you may allow, the sacrifice they claim is them going to the bush, you know, killing people, shedding blood.
Killing people.
So that means, by the way, and this government needed to be very, very, very careful.
Now I give you my time. Now let me
very careful. That
get me back my time.
It is being built on the blood of young men
people
and women of this country
now,
who died.
Agree with me, friend. I gave you my time. You're saying the sacrifice was going to the bush. I may want us to appreciate it that way, yes. But then, even the ant leadership, the top leadership, was in the bush.
Is the one.
They were all in the bush.
Could
there be a certain thing that maybe these people are not telling us that was agreed upon? that after a certain time maybe this should happen. Now they end up saying that there was bloodshed, there was this, but they individually equally participated.
They went for a cause.
They went
and
for the
cause changed.
Now that is the what cause changed? That's what I want us to understand.
Maybe I can
what
inform
cause
what
changed. What cause changed?
Thank you.
That
No, hold up.
that we may not understand it here, and him as well. He may not tell the bitter fact about it. But the cause that could have changed, the best person to explain that is Mugisha Muntu, is Dr. Kano Kiza Besiji. They were there. What causes that? Why did they disagree with him at the expense of saying that there is bad leadership? There is bad leadership. What is the bad? Defining the bad leadership is what I am not understanding from our friends from the opposition. Defining.
No, the cause was rigging.
Restructuring.
The cause was rigging, which is happening now.
Comrade.
The cause was abduction, which is happening today. The cause was the abuse of human rights, which is happening today.
Thank you.
The cause was abuse of office, corruption, and all those many, which have stayed.
Now,
before
a minute.
You remember that the viewers need now to know that General Museveni, the president of Uganda today,
but now you have
noted.
No,
yes, noted
that Ouma.
He noted that he went to the bush to bring a fundamental change, and one of the reasons was that he contested the 1980 election as being rigged. We have had on many fronts. We just had a number of by-elections, including Serere, where ANT participated, where personally I was on the ground, including the Electoral Commission, which is called the Independent Electoral Commission, which was there. And on over 16 polling stations, one of which, Kangodo polling station, Mr. Byamakama was there. So what happened? They couldn't even take decisions. So they have, you see, when you see the rigging that is happening, you need to know, whereby a regime that says has the numbers, goes out of its way on just a by-election to do or die, come on a polling station with military, even arrest its own presiding officers of the Electoral Commission, and arrest in Serere. I witnessed that at Obrin polling station. Get people, get the unprotected ballot papers, take them and stuff them, broad daylight. What does that tell? And you tell me that the cause never changed?
Okay, let us hear from him.
I may pose an important question.
Let's hear
as
from
I get
him.
there. But then, comrade, we are lawyers here.
Yes.
We are. There must be evidence of something. If there was pre-ticking, if there was election malpractice.
He who alleges.
But you know that
must prove that.
the
So
law,
that is
the
up to
law
you.
of evidence
Now,
it is he that has touched.
Now,
that has
the
seen,
issue,
that has
I'm going to ask a question. I want to ask
Nelson.
I want to ask you a
Allow
question.
him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Many a time we have had, there is a long stay of the current regime. It has spent numbers of years into power. I think let's deviate from that and ask ourselves, why has the current opposition spent much more time in opposition than now turning into a government? Could there be questions that the opposition should instead answer than critiquing a government that through its wit has managed to stay? The tactic of someone managing to stay in power, it is his own tactic. We may not tell you that. But now the issue is you who has not abused the power. How best can you organize yourself to prove that there can be a certain change of government, when even in opposition itself, just agreeing one fundamental thing towards a change must come with unity. We have not seen at any one point a government, an opposition in this country speaking the same voice. Even currently, as we debate and contemplate about the anti-homosexuality bill, there are certain things that there must come as one voice, whether government or not government. There must be a voice to be spoken as one, to protect the interests of the people. Yes, we are going to say, aren't they human beings and they meant to be protected? But now we all know
but
the secret in our minds.
But you know what?
We all know we all
and
know.
is against the
We
the
all
bill.
know. Yeah,
on
I'm
record.
not going to dispute that.
Yes. Isn't he government?
But the president also come out clearly several times and opposing it. So the attorney general and the president, whose comments should we take most?
And who are the representatives of the people?
So the issue here is, I need the opposition to prove us wrong, that there can be a certain clear agenda than just necessarily critiquing, saying there was bloodshed, there is a misuse of power. How best has the opposition organized itself to cause a fundamental change, maybe another fundamental change in this country?
Okay, Ouma, as you wrap up, the basic structure doctrine of our laws, has it been altered with?
Of course, it has been altered with. There has been changes on the original structure of our constitution. There have been changes to that effect. But we presume and we know it's all still to the interest of the people of this country. When a constitution is being changed, or when there is any alteration of anything in the constitution, there are arms that must participate in that. Parliament is important in this. When there is any kind of change, Parliament decides. And whatever has happened, Parliament has decided. In this Parliament, we have aunt members in it. We have aunt in it.
We do not have ANT in Parliament for information purposes.
We have people who believe in
ANT is not yet in Parliament.
Okay, we have got NUP in it, we have got FDC in it, we have got DP in it, we have got, yes, term limits, they were there, were there. And even that aside, the original aunt right now was there at that time of term limits, wasn't it there? It was there in that. So, and they participated in it. Now, the issue of the result of your participation, of course, comes with numbers.
And for
yes.
the,
and
for
that
the,
we cannot dispute. If
on term limit, just for the record, 6 members. And the proposal in Chankwanzi in 2004, the retired General Gregory Mugisha Muntu is the one who opened the window of listening the other side that was opposed to the term limit question.
But you have to
and there were 6. Listen, there were 6. So when you're saying that we are there, we had voices. General Muntu had a voice. Miriam Matembe had a voice. Abed Bwaneka had a voice.
Now the thing is,
moderator, the issue of structure,
fundamental
structure.
So when you say ANT was there and they didn't do anything, you need to be informed that there was a voice.
The fundamental structure.
Let us give JB a chance to wrap up and
let me wrap up. The fundamental restructuring question, Parliament plays a very important role in it. Yes. And we know the composition of Parliament. Parliament is highly composed by the National Resistance Movement, which shows that they're the most, and the people have chosen to believe in them. The issue of whether they do it the right way or not, as people claim, what are they doing that should be done, that they can have the numbers in Parliament. So restructuring the Constitution is based on Parliament. It gives its decision, the President either chooses to assent to it or not agree to it, and still returns to Parliament to make the wholesome decision.
All right.
So,
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, JB. Darren, I want to bring you in. The gentlemen are want to make this their conversation, but I want to bring your voice back into this. Is that the question of women? Today, our Constitution has Article 33 that is meant to enshrine an affirmative action on the rights of women. Uganda is also a signatory to the Maputo Protocol of Mozambique, you know, and many other laws that we are a part of. So, as we evaluate our Constitution, how has the rights of women evolved, and is it where we want it to be today? Because in terms of political participation, at least now we have every district having a woman MP. So the rights of women and how it has evolved.
Thank you very much. I think I should say I really love the conversation here. I love the energy.
Do you have comments about what they've been saying?
Yeah, I think I really love everyone's submission. I like the fact that everyone is, staying true to whatever they are, saying, and it makes a lot of sense for this conversation. But also to get back to you, yes, you said every district has a woman MP, and to people or to the government, it could maybe feel like, oh, that is equality, maybe that is representation now. But then having MPs, women MPs in each district does not really mean that the rights of women have really been catered for. We've seen very many loopholes. We've seen very many stuff that has been happening, that women have been left behind. No freedom of presentation. We lack a lot. We lack presentation and that we feel like if we are to amend, or maybe we are to have constitutional reforms, that should be at the center. I'm not speaking as a feminist or what, but if we want to have a government or maybe a country, a constitution that is really does not leave anyone behind, we need equal. There should be equal representation, and the men on this panel could be like, they should not be, or maybe it will never happen. Yes, there would never be equality. But then we want to see spaces where women are more, involved, where they're even in the decision-making tables, where they're given a chance to even make a comment on constitutional reforms if we are to have them on amendments. But there isn't that. Yes, there is progress, but we are saying more can be done.
We have the numbers.
Just.
No, we have them.
Just Darren, I'll actually, I was about to mention that if we are to have the conversation about constitutional reforms, the chair of this conversation will actually be a woman.
Yeah.
Right? That the second in command in this country is a woman.
Is a woman. Yeah,
Cabinet is 43% women.
The question,
Parliament,
by
what is lacking? What is
the
lacking?
question is,
Because
does
now,
she really have the power to even influence
Okay.
these policies? Does she have the power to say, oh, so we are amending, or maybe we are doing a reform? What is she going to say that is going to completely change the view, the portrait of women in this country? Because you could say she's the second top, but what powers does she have? Or does she also have to, listen and follow and submit? So we want women, to be able to influence policy, that even if the ladies that are there on the top, they should be able to also maybe given an opportunity to influence these changes as maybe we want them.
Okay, just still with Darren. Darren, could you compare for us, for example, the rise of political prowess of women vis-a-vis the social issues that the young girl child still faces? Issues like teenage pregnancies, issues like access to maternal health. So what is the correlation? We have seen women, like we all agree here, that we have seen women rising up the political ladder, but the issues down there still exist. So why is that so? Before I move to Ezra.
Yeah, I think that is a really good question, because you also ask yourself is why are we having very many maybe women or maybe men in governance, and we are still having a lot of issues, because the reason we send them out there is to actually represent the marginalized. So maybe there's lack of maybe it's a question of priorities. I feel like it's priorities. Is what do you want to do as a person? And I think Comrade mentioned is I don't know if you know him. Mentioned is if people really represented with their own hearts. Like you go in parliament, you go in a leadership position to care about the people that voted you in. So maybe it's a question of people maybe having different priorities, and also the other thing is there are not very many provisions for maybe these women in parliament, maybe in government, to cater very well for the people they are representing. There should be staggering, things that are making them maybe not able to represent it. But also, I should say it's a question of priorities.
Yeah.
What are your priorities? Are you remembering the people that put you up, or you'd really just maybe used them in courts?
Yeah, I think yes, Ouma. Just okay. Your comments before I move to Ezra.
I want to say in regards to the fact whether women. She said that women should be given an opportunity to make decisions of themselves, and I think the current government ought to be given credit that it has given a platform for women or for that gender to air out. So it is solely up to them to prove their worth of making that. Because being second, it has given
the regime has succeeded in manipulating women in spaces.
No. And the issue of manipulation, I don't want to discuss the issue of manipulation here. But
what is known,
the government has given an opportunity and even a platform for women to air out their concerns. And you have all been saying it, that women are in this position, here.
What quality do they bring there? What
it's up to them. The issue, when we have given a platform...
Because they are being manipulated.
When we are
also
the person
when
Civic Space gives us a platform like this to come and discuss,
Yes.
it's up to you to prove
If I am
whether you can discuss credibly or not credibly.
Just-
So the government has given a platform.
Just a
We have
second.
gotten women in, and you have said about over 40% of the government top leadership positions are covered by women. So the vice president is a woman, the prime minister, the first deputy prime minister, everything nowadays, the front desk nowadays is more of women centered
Just a
than
second.
men. So
Just a
I
second.
think the issue
A
is
second,
up to
just
them to prove that yes, indeed, the platform has been given to us. Now, this is how best we can.
Use the platform.
Yes.
You know, when we're in a home, and then the last born, there's a way parents train to treat the last borns.
Yes.
That everything make them more vulnerable. You get. Now, the government has given them an opportunity, but then I don't want you to now say that yes, they have been vulnerable or them being used. Or
Okay,
in a
they
certain way.
consider themselves.
They consider themselves vulnerable. But then let's not act like last borns. Once an opportunity has been given to you, use it. Don't again, you know.
But-
You may find some of us are last borns here.
No,
I don't want to say that.
I'm also last born.
The question is on the appointing authority, Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
Where you're given opportunity to appoint a prime minister, and of all your selection, it's like if you're head of family and you want to leave, instead of leaving your first daughter as taking charge of your family, and you say, there is a nanny there, a babysitter, and say everything they want, they will come to you. You are reducing a home to that extent.
Isn't that the principle of non-discrimination?
No,
That
no, no.
even the nanny,
You need to know
nanny
the
should have
quality
equal
that
rights.
suits
the quality that suits
position.
the position.
The quality that
So
suits
why
the
are you
position.
disputing the woman
what
being given
qualities
this position?
doesn't a woman of the person of
Of
Nabanja
yes.
have not to suit that position?
In my opinion, I don't think that she suits to be the prime
In
minister.
terms of what?
Oh,
In terms
exactly.
of what? Break it down for
When
us.
you look at what she does, it is
Like
the
what?
actions she
Like
does.
what? Like what?
Like what?
Eh?
What are the qualities?
You look at
that suit
the
prime minister?
OPM scandal. She's the overseer. Look at what is happening.
Even
This one
under
happened
the reign
yesterday.
of men,
No.
even under the reign of men,
So what
the
has she
OPM
done
had
different?
scandals.
You know her going disputing money and this and this and this.
I think-
you know
I
that
think-
one
I think, Comrade Kidega,
is not
we need-
befitting
we
of
need-
the
we have-
office of the prime
we
minister.
have stolen off
the
our time,
office of the
but
prime
I think we need
minister.
to agree.
He
That
gave
will
me
have
time.
time.
We need to
That
agree
will- yeah.
He
that
allowed
before
me
we
time.
discuss the Nabanja issue, I think what's disturbing us is knowing the roles of the prime minister, and I don't want us to go down there to discuss what should be the roles of the prime minister. Yes, there's a
But
scandal.
you
A minute.
appreciate
There's a scandal
this
currently.
government
There's a
if you are
scandal
given an
currently
opportunity.
that is known to even the littlest people in the village. The Iron Sheet saga of Karamoja. There's investigation going on.
Yes.
But isn't it?
Do you know
So
that?
do we need to
Aroko-
discuss that when there's
Do you
investigation?
know that David Diba? No, actually, you need to note David Diba.
Now the thing is-
David Diba, they are called
What is
dams. Dams in Karamoja. By then, the scandal was under the office of now the vice president, who is a woman. Do you recall all that? When she went
But
and
now you are putting the submission of corruption into the woman
Yes.
emancipation.
Yeah.
No, you
So,
need to know
are
that
you
women have
saying-
not proven worth of who they should be. But
That's what
they
you
are
were
going to
I was telling you. That's what I was telling
the
you.
appointing authority.
They've been given a
Okay,
platform.
Again, appoint somebody who is weak, who has proven that they are corrupt. Back to a position of a vice president, someone who stole the money in Karamoja. Now you keep bringing the same faces because
You have agreed with us.
he is good at manipulating
platform
such
has been
people.
The
given.
question was simple.
The moment
But
I want to
women have-
manipulate you, I will appoint somebody who's weak.
Okay, but how about if you also, okay, even if you are to take it
The way how you
the way
want it.
you are putting it, how about if you look at women like, for example, the Honorable Betty Kamya, aren't those some credible names?
Yes,
To that
Bet
extent.
Kamya, you saw.
So why
you
you-
saw
why
Bet
are you
Kamya
focusing
came
only
on Bet Kamya.
on those who,
and
in your view, don't appear to
good.
be?
Actually, my issue is the art of manipulation of the appointing authority. Betty Kamya came on national television. I am going to do lifestyle audit. She was very assertive. Immediately, the manipulator, the senior art of manipulator, came and said, "Look,
Are you
come
there?
and said."
I want to bring
He
in
came and
Darren.
said, "Look, don't do that. If you start auditing, you will. It is good. Those who are corrupt invest here." Imagine. He's manipulating the women. He's downplaying the role of women. So for me, the question why women are not doing what they ought to do
Even
in the
district
positions
women
they hold. Listen,
representatives.
in the positions they hold,
No.
it is
No.
it is
Darren.
because the appointing
Darren.
authority, one, undermines their power, undermines their ideas, like good ideas to say, look, I will fight corruption. You saw a recent letter stating, come here, don't audit military people.
You say the issues of the
Don't
heart. The
point
issue of the heart.
police.
So is it the issue of the heart?
So it is
Nelson
the art
and JB.
of manipulation by the appointing authority. In this case, the president of this country, General Museveni, who has manipulated women in those spaces.
Nelson and
Shall
JB,
we
thank you.
continue?
Darren,
Manipulating.
I'll give you some extra time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Please.
Well, manipulation and what did you say? I think I really love the fact that they're discussing women and this and saying manipulation. My main, as I wrap up, I would say is we need to examine power. We really need to examine power. We need to examine who makes the decisions, the final decisions. Should it be the president? Should it be parliament? Should there be a board that really sits and makes these decisions that maybe this kind of woman deserves to be maybe on this seat or does not? And also the other thing is my comrade said that women need to prove themselves. By the time you say women need to prove themselves, then you're already denying them what is rightfully theirs. Human rights say every woman. Human rights say every woman deserves a right maybe to take part in politics in all those things. So if you say you're giving me a seat at the table and I have to prove to you, then maybe it was not my seat to begin with. That's what you're insinuating, right? That's what
Him.
Yeah. That's
Not him. It was him who was saying that.
If you say I need to prove myself, the fact I need
Wait,
to
wait.
that I'm
No,
here.
no,
Proof was
I'll come clear. I'll come clear on that.
Yes.
I'll come clear on that. Let us first. Let us first protect our time. Let us first protect our time. Yeah, let's protect our time. I'll give my comment.
And I'm also going to get back to him what he's meaning about manipulation. But also to answer you first is you cannot say I have to prove myself. Because we do not say men, prove yourselves why you need to be in parliament. And I'm saying this, I'm not speaking as a feminist.
Yeah, sure.
But you do not have to tell a woman, or maybe Nabanja or any other lady in parliament that prove yourself. No. In the beginning, it's her right to be there. You know, if we're talking about human rights, she deserves to be there. I deserve to be on this panel by default of having human rights. So I don't think it's a question of prove yourself, no. Because by the time maybe people vote you in, before we get to the point of manipulation that my comrade says, by the time people vote you in, maybe they've seen what you can do. Maybe they've seen your capabilities. So you telling me prove yourself is another thing, and I don't think I support that. And on the issue of what he's been raising that had caused fire here is we need also to, check the education backgrounds of these leaders, check their past
track record.
We need to track down maybe what they've been doing to avoid anything that comes up. They say, women are not representing well, but who are you sending in office? It's the question, in my opinion. Who are you sending in office? Are they able to deliver? Not just because, it's a woman, we need equal representation in parliament, and we are just sending there. Yeah, it has happened, but then we also need to examine it a bit more. Maybe if we are doing a reform, maybe if we are doing the reforms, we need also to check who are we sending there. We do not want to just send women to just sit there maybe and enjoy the comfort of being in parliament or maybe in government, but also are they representing us? So let's track check. Yeah. Let's do everything that maybe we need to do to have women really, to avoid these clashes here.
All right, good point. Ezra, yes. Allow us to take a short commercial break. I'll begin with you after this break. And of course, the other comments therein. To the viewers, thank you for making a date with us this afternoon. We know that you have comments about this topic. There's a comment section right below this video. Give us your comments. Let's know what you think, your opinions. This is a free space. See you shortly after this commercial break.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break. Ezra, let us examine what the good Montesquieu, the French philosopher, said about separation of powers. And as we discussed that, does the current constitution, does the current legal framework provide platform for sufficient separation of powers? We know that Article 126 establishes the judiciary. Yes. Article 98 establishes the executive president and, therein. Article 79 establishes the parliament. So how are all these organs performing? Are there checks and balances? Does the constitutional framework as it stands right now provide for checks and balances and also separation of powers? But also, as you do that, examine for us the powers of the president vis-a-vis the powers of the rest of the organs.
Thank you. What I can say, as my comrades have discussed, you see there is a hot discussion, but to the point, I can surely say that this constitution prevails the doctrine of separation of powers. In this, I mean that the president appoints the ministers. And the ministers, some are members of parliament. Those ones are MPs from parliament. Then the judiciary participates when the speaker is being elected. You see that those three governing bodies of this country, they are participating in conjunction. They are working together. So the doctrine of separation of powers in this constitution or in this country, I have no doubt, maybe on the exercise of the powers of the president. But the doctrine of separation of powers, by the way, I love the way how he is looking at me.
I know, right?
But what I can say, sure.
Listen, you are intimidating my
my
panelists.
Not, I'm not intimidated. But what I can say, like the president appoints the ministers
who are vetted and approved by parliament.
By the parliament. And if you go to checks and balance, doctrine of separation of powers, and those are the duties. And they are following the law. They are following articles in the constitution, the provisions in the constitution, like provision of the minister to be vetted by the parliament. And the speaker of parliament is there, is the chairperson of the vetting committee. So they participate in working together. Though the question of delivery, it's not my part to discuss. But the question, the question was simple, that are we observing checks and balance in this government?
Okay, can you say that institutions are independent, for example? Can you say that parliament is an independent institution? Yes, we understand that they should coexist, etc. I agree that.
As of now, I can say that institutions are independent, but when the point of checks and balance comes in, they work together, they don't remove that independent point, but they work together to accumulate or maybe to have the final solution on what is on table. If it is an anti-homosexuality bill, it is brought in parliament. What is the judiciary supplementing on it? And then, if they are allowing it or if they are opposing it, have they passed the bill? Then the executive, the head of is he assenting the bill? That is the process of checks and balance. But as of now, they are working on its independent part. But when that part of checks and balance and separation of power majorly checks and balance. Because separation, you go to independent part. Judiciary does its own because it does not set laws. It doesn't. It gives the judicial remedies to the public. Then Parliament sets the law. It's not the executive. Then the executive assents to the law or governs the country. So that's what we are saying that this body is independent and this one. But when terms of checks and balance comes in, they participate.
For example, would you give the example of the most recent constitutional court decision to overturn the provisions of the Computer Misuse Act? Is that an aspect of checks and balances?
Yes.
That here is the judiciary checking Parliament.
Exactly. That's what we mean. If you are not independent, if they were working together, maybe let's say that Parliament, judiciary was involved in passing this law. For it is to interpret the law.
But we have seen executive, putting Parliament on auction market. You saw money being exchanged for the removal of term limits in 2004, 5 million.
The thing is
in 2017, just a minute. In 2017, we had the aspect of the age limit, and people swallowed money. You get it? You saw the institution that was supposed to protect Parliament.
You used your time.
No, just a second to inform. This is information.
Information. Okay, just allowed in a minute.
Yes, you saw the military on the orders of the executive interfering with the independence of the Parliament.
That's not.
They entered.
That's not information.
You have seen the executive, just Honorable Prime Minister Nabanja, interfering with the judiciary in adjudication of cases. You saw that happen in Mengo.
But that one was sorted.
It was sorted.
No, how is it sorted? By asserting. No, how?
The thing is simple.
But it means that you see, the Chief Justice came to make his comments after a wrong done by interference.
So you cannot say that you wanted the Chief Justice to leave the community being misguided.
Who led that problem, that confusion? It was the executive interfering. So actually, the Chief Justice came to assert and defend the institution of the judiciary. So what I want to tell you is, you have seen President Museveni, have on law dinners, meeting judges and telling them, no, we need now to have, don't use the logic, don't use the law to give a judgment. You have seen in those issues. He made that assertment when he was trying to defend the investor from China who invested in steel in Tororo, saying, how do you give an injunction on a person who has put investment? But this is what the law says. So he's trying to manipulate these institutions.
Okay,
we have also had the president, regardless of the electoral commission, having a security of tenure, for example. But just a moment, having a security of tenure, but we see him appointing them. Why don't we have the reforms that we are talking about? For example, having...
We shall get to reforms.
Yes, so the issue of separation of independent institutions of government, there is so much interference by the executive to the judiciary and to Parliament.
From the start, you could say that there is more interference.
Which means no independence.
Listen,
you agree?
Nelson, it's okay.
Listen, you could say that maybe they interfere, not going into all that discussion. Some of us, what I can tell you, I'm not sure that the other MP was given money maybe to do what, and the executive is the one that commanded for the military to enter into Parliament, and I was not in the executive's office to hear that command. So we shouldn't base on allegations.
Do you agree that they interfere?
The thing is simple.
Because if they interfere, they are not independent.
There is a point that when leaders lack vision, youth lack direction. So sometimes some of our leaders misguide us and we lose direction. What I can tell you, if you are guided very well, you know the law. We are discussing the doctrine of separation of powers and checks and balance. You will understand that Parliament sets the law. Then the other one assents to the law. Then on the government, it is executive. Judiciary interprets the law.
What is the practice, please?
No. Hold on. Nelson, hold up, please.
Now, the thing is simple. If you are practicing the law, do you go to Parliament? You go to the courts of law. So MP doesn't go to courts of law to set the law. But for you, go to the courts of law to practice the law. Then the ones in executive, they governs the country and manages some of the resources. Parliament distributes because it is the representative column of the people in this country. That is our basics of discussion.
Just information
I
on
want to
that
go to
point,
JB.
because he mentioned about me.
No.
JB,
You know, and I need to make it very, very clear.
Note it down.
Your time will come.
Note it down.
Time
You
will
will
come.
have your time.
It's okay.
JB, let's now shift gears to actually the actual constitutional reforms that we need as this country. If you were to propose 3 reforms, what would they be for you?
Before that, Comrade Kidega, there is, in the previous discussion, I made a statement that women have to prove their worth.
Yeah.
And I need to come clear on that to avoid any mishaps of thinking of the statements I made. And I'm going to maintain that, but add on something. One time we had a discussion with Dr. Kano Besje, and he was making an emphasis on whether we have citizens in this country. Now, when he was talking about citizens, it brings me back to his point, whether people are acting in faith, in good conduct, in execution of their powers. And now I'm going to go back why I said women have to prove their point. And I'm going to make a change by adding, once appointed into a position, man or woman, you ought to prove your worth. That's how best I'm going to change it. Once appointed into a position, I retract the initial statement, but I emphasize by saying, once appointed into a political position,
Irrespective of your gender.
irrespective of your gender. I only talked about woman because it was what was happening at that time. Irrespective of your gender, you ought to prove your worth
To the
to
people.
make you a citizen of this country. We have had changes in the constitution, getting back, Comrade Kidega. Age limit, we had that. We have term limits. And if there is a key change or reform that I would propose and appeal to even my own personal government, is the issue of term limits.
Yes.
We ought to bring back term limits for a good democratic government like this one. We ought to rethink that. When these changes were being put on board, and those were the fundamental changes at that time, as far as the constitution was concerned, age limit and term
Limits.
all, if I'm not mistaken, 80%, 85% of the political parties in this country were involved. Now, the issue of whether they were considered or not goes back to their numbers.
Yes.
Of how is your number in parliament going to impact on a certain change of the constitution. So I have one fundamental aspect that I would appeal to even viewers to agree with me, that we need back term limits in this country.
So term limits.
Yes.
Nelson, what would be your proposed reforms for the constitution? Would you go for a total overhaul or just certain provisions?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for the opportunity once again. Before I get to the reforms that I would advocate for, he mentioned something. You know, when you read the law of Uganda, you will see judiciary, executive, parliament. Now, when we when we are articulating, you look at the practice.
Yes.
And you mentioned on record that there is some small interference. You see, I agree with Kanyihamba in his book that these powers are like 3 cooking stones. You cannot remove one. A pot will not do what? Will not sit.
So they can't be independent totally.
So, but look, there shouldn't be the overstepping
The overstepping, true.
of the what we see. Judiciary interfering with lawmaking. You will know. Calls be made from center right, even with the judiciary. If you don't know, say you don't know, and then we move on. Don't argue the paper. Argue the practice.
But that is here.
No,
sir.
that is yes.
For the viewers, they know.
You
Those
say
who have
that
gone in
law
court
provides it very clear that we have parliament and what? And judicial and executive.
So should the law be amended to bring in
yes.
practice, how they should practice?
How
Is
they
that what
should-
you are trying to say? That
That's
there
not-
should be a certain fundamental
That's why
constitutional
my other
reform
communication-
that
on the
we
reform.
should...
No.
Listen,
On my
the
other
reform
communication, I
is
stated
on
it
the
very
hearts
clear.
to respect the law.
Listen.
The values to respect
Comrade,
the law.
listen.
But you know, that's up to you as an individual. On your values,
Mr.
it's up
JB.
to you as an individual. When you
Mr.
say that we should
JB.
have reforms,
Mr.
maybe,
JB.
I mean, maybe as you say, we need to maybe have a certain constitutional reforms on how we are going to practice. I don't know how best I can define it. You know,
JB.
which is not possible. Which is not
Okay,
possible.
my point was clear.
Go ahead.
That these parties are independent. But in terms of checks and balance, as the question was addressed to me, they work together. That's what you call interference. In terms of checks and balance, maybe if you appreciate
Okay.
the separation doctrine of separation of powers and you leave out checks and
Thank
balance.
you very much. The
Yes.
viewers are aware of us with what we are discussing.
Yes.
So they have the opinion. It's my opinion that there is overstepping
Yes.
and there is no independence of the organs of
But
government.
you don't practice the law in parliament.
So the address on the issue of reforms. One, the first number one mistake we did as Uganda, and this regime, which needs probably to correct if it is to be in good books with some of us, is to restore term limits. That's number one. Number two, to ensure that we should not depend on the goodwill of an individual. For example, a president, to give him all those much powers. So for me, I advocate for demystification of the powers of the president. Three, also to ensure that there is need for reform on the values of the individuals in those positions. For sure, you can have the term limits, you can have the human rights, the electoral reforms, but the moment you have people who are just threatened of their own life to survive, not to serve a citizen in that office, they will abuse it. You will have, for example, an independent electoral commission, but they have a security of tenure, but because they think they have to appease the appointee for the reappointment and all that, then they have to act in their favor. They have to close their eyes on the wrongs done by the individuals instead of taking a decision as an independent electoral commission. So for me, one is to entrench the security of tenure of for example, the electoral commission. If it means to say these are the years, be there, and no reappointment, for example, know that you are doing that, you're performing that role as, let's say, the chairman electoral commission for 5 years. What you do will be written on your record. Then the track record of what you will have done in that office will either be a point of a basis to be appointed for another office, but not in the same office. So we need to really look at citizens. We are talking about having citizens who look at the country to serve the common good of this nation.
Patriotic.
Even if we did reforms of day and night and did every word that everybody can mention to be on paper, but we do not have the will of individuals in those offices to practice and follow what is on paper, we are doing nothing.
Just a
Because we
question.
have so many reforms.
Just a
Like
question.
for electoral reforms, they are
you-
really
would
perfect.
you-
But
Nelson, would you
they are not
propose-
being followed.
Could you be part of the conversation to say that, for example, we need the UPDF out of parliament as a reform? Well, knowing that your party leader did represent the UPDF in parliament.
Well, that one I can surely say we need to ensure that the UPDF is UPDF and it has its role to defend the territorial sovereignty of our country. Okay? So I don't think that we should have UPDF in parliament. We need to have the military police out of politics. Respect of human, but you're having police, UPDF. There was a UPDF patrol all over in all these by-elections you have seen. Abductions made by the UPDF, you know, in by-elections? Why would you have the UPDF in a by-election? Why would you have police in a by-election? Be there to keep law and order, but not to intimidate, but not to interfere. And that's what we are talking about. Those people, they know their roles they hold do not mandate them to conduct an election, to enforce the way how an election is supposed to be conducted. But because of the rot and breakdown of systems,
But
and it all starts from the top. They normally say that the fish
I just want to
rots.
hold on.
No,
Just
just a
to-
moment. Because
Just
the
hold on.
fish rots from the head. The moment the head is rotten, the entire fish is rotten.
Okay.
One of
So-
them is president of the
noted.
whole village.
So really, for me, I can.
Point noted.
I want to.
Point, no. You will have your time to comment. I want to bring in Darren. Darren, what would be your proposed constitutional reform, for example?
Thank you. I think I would not differ. I think term limit is a really huge conversation, is a huge thing that we need to look at as we are doing the reforms. And also the other thing is really age limit. We need to put a certain age where someone needs maybe to be in leadership and also step aside for the other people to, you know, take on leadership. So age limit, term limit, and also the other thing is we need to revise human rights.
Okay.
We need to revise human rights. We need to revise the powers that are within the human rights setting in the constitution. Yeah.
Like, for example, the Uganda Human Rights Commission, would you maybe propose that its mode of establishment or how it comes to be in place should be revised? Because as it stands, the members are appointed by the president.
Yeah.
So then where does that leave, for example, the independence of that institution that is meant to overlook the aspect of human rights? So,
Yeah, thank you. The other thing I would have said is we need also to look at powers. We need also to separate powers. Who decides on what and who maybe gets to decide on what. We know the president is always the top head, the top dog that really makes the final decisions. But we need to, as we do reforms, we need to separate powers, that who is appointing who in this office, who is appointing, because you should be having some strength, and maybe this person could be having other strengths, and they could also make meaningful decisions. But we should not give powers to one person to actually kind of be dictate whatever really has to happen. So with the Human Rights Commission, who appoints who and who selects who should also be a thing we need to look at. The main thing is, let's separate powers. Let's look at separation of powers to avoid clashes with democracy and poor representation of women, maybe, or someone saying, the president makes that decision, so we do not have anything to say. That's the whole thing of human rights. Even as you're in parliament, or maybe the leaders we say, should be able to also have freedom to speak up, to object, and maybe, yeah.
Oh, wow, thank you. Yes, Ezra, of course, I know you have comments regarding what our comments have been saying, but what would be your reforms, for example?
Yeah, I think, direct to the question, I think I agree with the entire team on term limits, but on age limit, because there is no way how you chase your father when he's at 89, that you are not the head of the family. So I think if you are Kidega in 98 and you still have vision that you can lead this country, you can come and contest. But when you have term limits, on the age limit, I don't go there. Maybe I can talk of maybe human rights reform, maybe education reforms. Then on representation part, these MPs, maybe qualifications, because I think there we need entire maybe
Now,
scrutinization.
Do you think perhaps to resolve that we could have a two-tier parliament, that you have a parliament, then you have a senate? I don't know, so that decision-making is really filtered out. And
By the way, if it can bring out our well-centered argument and maybe a good decision makers, I think we can adopt that, because we have seen our members of parliament, and you could see a member of parliament on a serious matter of national importance, and you wonder, why are you still a student? And the other one is maybe it is her blessing from God.
And most of them are NRM.
And what I can tell you, I watched someone from Masaka, and is not an NRM person, for your own information, but I was worried. that how, but you see in our politics of these days, it's just a vibe that I'm on this card, so I'm from this region, and you go and win an election. But if we leave that part, but we can do scrutinization of having eligible candidates. Maybe it can be a good reform in our parliament. You see, our promulgators of this constitution were so very, I don't know how I can say it, but they were a bit intelligent. They tried to tackle each and every one. But when time comes, like as we are complaining of Misuse Act, that is the time of the thing. It is the time. When time comes, you need to see that this one was done in this way, and it has to be maybe looked through. So we should see on maybe how we can do a reform on having good eligible representatives in parliament. That
So-
one. Then a reform on the appointment committee,
Okay.
on the appointing authorities. Then who should appoint? Who should vet? I get. So like you are an MP and I'm an MP, I'm vetting you. Are you getting? It is an onslaught for me to you, and we win. It's a win-win situation. That is our politics in this country. So if we do those reforms, I think we can be on a right
On a
guide.
good trajectory.
Yeah.
Yes, just final comments regarding this before we shift here. So I'll begin
Thank
from
you.
that side coming here.
Thank you.
So in 2 minutes, make your final comments regarding this topic, then we can move on.
Thank you. We have good laws in the country.
Yes.
And of course, we have tried to digest what we think should be the reforms that should be brought on table. I will not repeat, but they have been emphasized by colleagues. When it comes to the concern of the ethical values of an individual to cause a certain implementation in an office, is not a matter to be left to the president. I want us to look at the president not just as a politician, but as a leader. When the president, in executing his leadership skills, makes appointment to an individual, we have seen him make even appointment of people who are in opposition, who have initially critiqued the government. And then these very people come on board, do the service, and are equally criticized. What is the problem? It goes back to his ethical question. Now, when it comes to ethics or values, that is what should define who a citizen is. A citizen is defined by your values and how best to put those values into practice to make sure that people's interests are put or are well listened to. Now, that is a question for I as an individual. I think now that I've had certain political parties or affiliations to certain political parties describe these values as proponent to what should be composed in this government, maybe they could set up organizations among themselves to cause a certain mobilization in the country that this is what ethical values means. And I think they will be helping. They will be helping. Such political affiliation will be helping. So the issue of whether the
Mention it is
president appoints, the issue of whether the president appoints rightful people in power. And by the way, for your information, that is why we have, ever since the president got into power, he has not maintained the same cabinet. He has made adjustments. He has made reappointments. Maybe they have been based on your ethical values. Who knows? But he has made adjustments. And he has even continued to show willingness to work with opposition. We have seen the recent Mao. That is a matter that cannot be disputed. You get? Betty Kamya, these are all people who have initially critiqued and said the government is not what? Well functioning. But they have been brought on board, and then we're having figures still criticizing. I think certain political parties in this country should reform into becoming organizations to cause a certain sensitization of who a rightful citizen should be, and not necessarily being the political heads or governments in this country.
All right. Nelson, your final comments regarding constitutional reforms.
Yeah, as well mentioned in the beginning, before I even talk about the constitutional reforms, we need the overhaul of reforms of individuals in those different offices, whether in movement, whether in public service, whether in government, whatever. We need to have value-driven leaders in positions. Then, even if we had many reforms as possible as may be proposed, but we do not have the value-driven leaders in those offices for the good of this nation, of the common man of this country, then we wouldn't be doing anything. On the proposals on the constitutional reforms that really are needed as fast as yesterday, we need to restore term limits. We need to have police, military, UPDF out of, elections, out of parliament as well. We need to reduce the powers of the president. We need to ensure that we have reduced the powers of the president in as far as appointing, like Human Rights Commission, like Independent Electoral Commission. We need to see functioning of systems, of institutions. The moment we have that, we have the law. What is lacking is the functionality of those systems, the implementation of the laws we have. So, short of that, we may continue to lament where we have proposals made, but the individuals, the goodwill of leaders who are in power are not willing, to implement, are not giving space to people in those offices to work, and they will continue manipulating as it has been, whether in public service, whether in government, like ministers and all that. Regardless of how good you are, the moment now you be subjected to manipulation and you do not stand firm. There are good people in movement who they will say this is wrong, but they cannot come out and say it. Why? They know that the moment probably they say they will lose their job. So we have had many people who now serve for self, not for the country. And the fact they serve for self, not for the country, they end up appeasing the appointee authority. The appointing authority, rather, so that they can remain into that. It is until we have a shift of forces that the good, well, and disciplined, value-driven individuals in positions of influence across the board, that we can have, we can now speak of good governance. Having respect of human rights, equality before the law, accountability, which is a problem here in the country, zero tolerance to corruption, integrity of leaders is very, very key. You need to check track record of if Nelson, I've ever swindled money, why do you dare give me now public funds to manage? We need to create that, and the moment we don't, he mentioned about that once the head messes up, then the youth also get misdirected. Now we are having a regime, a generation of young people now who are also fighting to enter into a space to root, to do the rooting. They say, the moment for me I enter here, I will be, I will have finished. So there is a state of no hope. They are trying to create a state of no hope, that even if, however good you are, you will not change anything. And the moment that continues into the minds of Ugandans, we shall give up. But like, as I said in the beginning, ANT is here to change the political culture of this country, to ensure that there is hope, even the little hope. Those who have hope, there is unity, and we continue to speak hope to Ugandans. All is not lost. The few of us, we can create the fundamental change of this country desires, not the one that was talked about in 1986.
Like the Mosey movement is coming on board.
Okay, thank you.
Don't even speak about that here.
Yes, Darren, your last words regarding this.
Yeah, my last remarks would be the whole reason why we need reforms is to evaluate, to redo, or maybe to change the loopholes that we have right now in government and maybe in our leadership, is to address accountability, rule of law, good governance, and maybe the issues of democracy. So we need I think we need like a whole reform, literally. If I could track back, is we need a whole reform. because there are very many accountability. We do not have accountability in this country, as you said. Rule of law, good governance, democracy. Those are some of the things that we are really grappling with. And if we are to do reforms, these are all that should be at the center. So maybe it's really also very important that we have reforms. But I should comment on his comment when you're saying about the age limit. Why I said we need age limit is we have a population of literally 70 or 75% of young people in this country. And if we are having that percentage and we are saying we are not putting age limit on who is supposed to be in power or who is supposed to be a leader, then maybe young people.
Won't that be discrimination
That would be
against
discrimination.
It will
against
not- no.
marginalized groups?
No, I was
The 20% who are
coming
few, but
there. I
you have to
was
marginalize them because
No.
they're few.
I was
You
coming
want us to
there.
maintain the elderly in parliament.
No,
representation.
I'm not marginalizing any, but what I'm saying is it's a question of equality, or maybe equity. We have very many young people. At least we need to embrace the fact that they are the majority. So if we are saying there is no age limit and then there's this young person maybe who has all the energy, because it's not age that really maybe gets in leadership, but what can you do? So I spoke on the aspect of young people, the fact that there are really very many, and we need to have them at the center of any reforms that we are making. Yeah.
All right, Ezra.
Maybe
Being young,
to,
this transition.
to
I know.
also comment on her point
Yeah.
of of age limit. Maybe if it is a suggestion,
Yeah, it came as a
yes,
suggestion.
I can also suggest maybe to this government also maybe to do restructuring of other youth organs
Of representation.
Because if we have like you comrade from National Youth Council, then we have UNSA, we have other youth league, but we are not fully represented. They can also restructure, but not that, because what I know as of now, we have been seeing members of parliament saying that they are 24. It depends on your capabilities if you can represent. And we saw Katumba, he contested with the president. So on that part of representation, on the age limit, basically, I can say, maybe they can restructure another youth channel that we can properly, because we have our youth MPs in parliament. If Kidega, you can well know. We have those MPs, we have youth leaders, we have at even every district, we have this one is from youth wing of ANT, the other. So you see that we are a bit represented. Maybe they can do restructuring as a reform. But on constitutional reforms, I agree entirely with my comrade, because those are the principles of to have a good constitutional reforms, like accountability, rule of law, governance. Exactly. Like basically, I can agree with her. We need to have good constitutional reforms that are protecting citizens of this country.
All right, thank you.
And we should
And
also
also the other
reduce
thing-
the size of parliament.
Size of
You
parliament.
hear now the movement is good at that, creating more constituencies to
Gerrymandering.
create more NRMs. So we also need to know really.
All right.
The entire Uganda being represented by 600.
Okay, let's
No.
let's spend the last couple of minutes, maybe 15, to discuss the aspect of the politics in Kenya. Raila Odinga declared Monday, 20th March
Yeah.
of this week, a public holiday that Kenyans shall march to State House. We saw comments from the Kenya Kwanza government saying that, well, if you want to do this, get approval from police. So as Kenya, I mean, they are just from an election, not more than a year ago, and here they are. A very polarized election. So I don't know what is happening exactly. And JB, I know you're a strong supporter of Raila Odinga. Yes. So is this the Raila Odinga sort of old politics, just causing havoc here and there? I don't know. What's happening?
I don't know where you got that information from that I'm pro Odinga. But looking at his political history, Raila Amolo Odinga, the son of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, looking at his political history, when it comes to fighting for the citizens of Kenya, he has been at the forefront. From the times of Moi's era, we have seen Odinga come on board and make advocacy, make movements that he believes in are for the best interest of the people of Kenya. And in one way or the other, I can say he has been successful in those various movements to fight for the people of Kenya. So, well, just like any other person who will fail an election, people will say that it's anything that any person who has failed an election can come on board and say, I was rigged, so this and way on and so on and so forth should be the way to go. But it's just not in Kenya. We need to contemplate this together with what's happening in South Africa, what's happening in other African states. Have also come up on this very day to say no to the sitting governments. And I think Raila, as a person, and my opinion, Raila is on the right course. In the previous election, that is the 2012 election of Kenya, people talked so much about the handshake. And me, as an individual, I was a little taken back by someone like Raila Odinga who went for a handshake with the government, because I didn't know what he was planning. But given the half term of his leadership, as compared to that when William Ruto was serving with the then President Uhuru Kenyatta, I think we saw the level of reforms, the level of accountability that existed. And that even Uhuru Kenyatta himself still makes mention of it. So the issue of demonstrations in Kenya, I think Raila is on the right course. He believes the Kenya Kwanza is a Kenya Kwisha government. And I think I would support Raila's move to State House. I have no reservations about that.
Nelson, your comments, but also importantly, is that where does this leave the Supreme Court decision? We know that Supreme Court, ruled on this matter. So now, as seeing Raila again coming up to say that we need the servers opened, we need to see what exactly are the results of that election.
Yes.
Where does that leave the Supreme Court's decision?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. And as I mentioned, governance and democracy, and it's something that we see it is at the move across the region. And between me and you, we, even on this very platform, this Youth Roundtable, we accredited Kenya. We credited Kenya to say it is a step ahead in as far as democracy and practicing issues of good governance as concerned. The way we didn't see arrests, tear gas in the last election is Kenya and all that. So with the Odinga coming out and declaring a public holiday on 20th of March, well, first and foremost, it is unconstitutional for him to do so, because as the Holiday Act, the Holiday Act of Kenya,
The president,
Section 3, it is the Cabinet Secretary who is mandated to declare, to alter, the public holiday, or to even add on the schedule or remove from the schedule, the already scheduled public holidays. So, by him coming out, one, it is unconstitutional by law. But two, him, because I've not heard, I don't know, I've not heard that he has been arrested. I've not heard probably. So that shows how Kenya tolerant is to Kenya's politics, government. If it was in Uganda and it is, let's say, Muntu, Kiza Besigye, or our colleague, the principal in NUP, Chagolanyi, saying, I have declared the 20th of March, and this is a march from Magere to, let's say, State House and Tebe, he would be arrested before he leaves his home. You would hear about grenades here and there. So that's something that we need to learn. As much as Kenya is making advancements, it also has its own challenges as a country. But we cannot take it away that Kenya is a step ahead in as far as modeling and being a model for good governance in the region.
Some information, yeah.
Yeah.
In regards to you saying that there is a step ahead in the democracy of Kenya, is what I may not attach myself so much to. You know, you said that if at all a certain Bobby Wine today or anyone came up in this country to move to State House, there's going to be a certain way he's going to be prevented from doing so by the concerned bodies. It may not necessarily be the president. But then, it is the issue of the effect. Not giving credit to the sitting government in Kenya that it is operating well because it has not arrested.
It respects human rights.
A minute. That is
that
is your opinion.
That's why you saw
that's
even
opinion.
the Uganda
I want to
human
assure
rights
you.
chapter
I want to assure
had to
you.
go to Kenya.
Comrade, I want to assure you that if Raila Odinga is arrested today in Kenya, for those who have followed Kenyan politics, they know what it can mean to Kenya.
So that's why they did not tear gas in an election. That's why they did not arrest.
I'm tempted to say
Have
so.
we seen the campaigns as
now the issue,
of Uganda in Kenya?
The issue is now there. Look at the institutions of Kenya. Look at the institutions of Kenya. But I don't want you to make mention of the Kenya Kwanza government is not doing that because it is respecting human rights.
No.
Several human rights have been violated in Kenya as well, just like they have been violated in Uganda and
what
any other
degree?
countries. Maybe to that extent. But my point is,
As you conclude.
as I conclude, if Raila Amolo Odinga is arrested today in Kenya, and I think that is his style to provoke the current government, and the current government is simply acting smart, not giving it credit, but acting smart not to arrest him. Because well, you have said that he has declared a public holiday, which he himself is not meant to declare. But he has gone ahead to do that, isn't it? There are demonstrations happening as we speak right now already in Kenya, isn't it? Why isn't he being arrested? Suppose he is arrested. Maybe it's just being smart enough of the current government. And yes, well, as I'm an Odinga supporter, I like the way the president is handling the situation before today. I don't know after today. That's his question to us. But before today, he has been calm about it. He has said, "You go to see, don't destroy people's things." But him not arresting Raila is because there are fears. It's my opinion. There are fears of the implications of arresting Raila. He is not like any other ordinary opposition in this Africa. I would say so.
All right.
Exactly.
Let's hear from Darren. Darren, new developments in Kenya's politics. What do you make of it?
What is really happening in Kenya, I should say, is affecting all of us because we are looking at EAC. If I should mention, is whatever is happening in Kenya is not leaving Uganda, Tanzania, or any other EAC countries behind. We are seeing the trade disruptions that are happening. We are seeing the security, because if a war strikes in Kenya right now, Uganda can't be safe.
Did you say war?
Yeah, if it really strikes right now, we have to be like brutal honest. Uganda can't be safe. So where does it leave us behind? That today Raila can have the power to wake up and say, I'm announcing a demonstration and it is happening, and we are here as Ugandans, or as neighbors. We do not know what is going to happen next. What does that maybe have to say about the power structures in Kenya? And what he has been saying is maybe Ruto has not responded because of the implications that could happen, but also that sends us to examine the power dynamics in Kenya. I mean, do you just wake up and say, I'm announcing a demonstration just because maybe you're the PM, or maybe, that where does it leave us as even we go forward? Because this is not only Kenya at stake, it's literally the entire EAC. And me, I'm looking at it in an aspect of being a neighbor, or maybe a brother that is going to maybe get affected because I don't even know where this all came from in the beginning. So we need to stand in solidarity with them and maybe just pray for peaceful demonstrations as they carry on. Also, the other thing is we need to examine so well the power dynamics in Kenya, because I didn't really understand how. I know, but how can Raila wake up and say, I'm announcing a demonstration? What if maybe the opposition did it? Maybe
Council did
it's a question of, you know, who has the power, who carries more power, and who people listen to more. But shouldn't be like that. You know, there should be a rule of law. They should maybe respect the constitution. What does it say? Does it give the PM the audacity, the authority to just come up and disorganize the citizens? In my opinion,
he is not the PM.
Oh yeah,
He's
the former prime minister.
Former prime minister. Yeah. Yes, Ezra.
Yes. Basically, what is happening in Kenya, it is a surprise to us because we have been respecting Kenya as the key holder of democracy. But what I can say, it is surprise. But what I mean, and by the way, from the start, or maybe what I can start on, is that I want to credit Raila Odinga for his contribution towards Kenyan politics. Because in 1997, I think the issue of multi-party system, that's when it was introduced in Kenya. Then another to note is that Article 37 of the Kenyan Constitution allows any or every person in Kenya to demonstrate. Then, on my point of view, I stand with Ruto's response. By the way, when I saw that thing coming through, I waited for the statement from the president. And the head of state clearly stated that you are allowed to demonstrate, but not with stones. You just get a permission from the police, go and demonstrate. He is not denying the human right under Article 37 of their constitution. He is allowing them. But now, my concern here is not about Raila Odinga. My concern is what is the impact and where is it leaving the country and Africa as whole. If I can take you back, I can recall very well we attended APRM together. Our president, we had youth from African Union, African countries, and our president clearly stated that youth of these days leave the biological things, go to move with ideological, because the youth are the ones who killed Jesus. So my point is, Raila Odinga is moving to State House, but not with all the people. And that thing happened in 2013 in Kenya. It has ever happened. It's not new. But another thing, in the book of Maxwell, under 21 laws of leadership, there is a law of legacy. He has contributed to the history of Kenyan politics, but is he leaving a legacy? Or he is terminating his legacy? Or he is abolishing the legacy he made? We are seeing it in South Africa today. We are seeing it in Nigeria and Tunisia. It's like African revolution today. By the way, we are happy that for us, Uganda is having national careers guidance in Kololo today. For them, they are demonstrating. But for us, we are giving career guidance to Ugandan youth, but those ones are putting them on front. They will have face challenges. They will face arrest. The Ugandan youth or the Kenyan youth, I'm wondering of the South African youth, the implication. Raila Odinga will not, maybe, I'm not sure, because the event is still ongoing. I'm not sure, but those who will be affected, businesses, as of now, Kenyan Airways has halted the flights from South Africa. So you see there is interruption of business. What I can say, let them do, but in regards to the law, and then youth, you move to the State House when you know your implication. I get.
Okay.
I think
Thank you.
Just to inform
our time is fast spent.
Yeah.
So, in 30 seconds, please, and strictly 30 seconds, give us your last words. I'll begin with you.
Raila has left a legacy.
Yes.
And it has continued to last until forever. be recognized in East Africa, even Africa as a whole. The legacy has left. He is not in any way terminating his legacy, because his noble cause has always been to fight for the interest of the people of Kenya, and that he has put it to the forefront each and every single time. We are aware we are in a begging economy. Our country is a begging economy. In economics, a beggar is someone who, you want to beg, you don't want to work hard, or you don't want to work, but you expect to be earning. Now, that comes on how Kenyans' demonstrations is going to affect our country. Already being a begging economy, and knowing how much exports we make to Kenya, it going to demonstrate is going to affect us more and more, if at all things go berserk so much in the country, in Kenya. So, leadership as a whole ought to be recognized in a way of how best people's interests are being put forward. Kenya is going through economic hardships, just like Uganda is going through economic hardships. When someone comes up, like Raila Odinga has come up to fight for the people of Kenya, he is trying to, yes, he may be causing an injury, but he is preventing a bigger injury. So, and I think I would give him credit, absolute credit for that. Otherwise, I appreciate Civic Space for this time that you have given unto us to come and air out our views, our concerns as the young generation. And I think we continue, and I would personally love to continue coming back to Civic Space to speak more about concerns of our country from the youth perspective. I so thank you. John Baptist Ouma is my name.
Thank you. Agaba, you are a value-based institution. 30 seconds.
Thank you very much.
Let's
I
test
love
your
it
values.
from his words on record. Uganda, for the last 37 years, we have been put to a begging state. Very unfortunate and very frustrating and disappointing.
Like many states in Africa.
What happens in Kenya affects us. You well know, you remember fuel prices, because we are a land-locked country. Most of our transits, from shipments through Kenya, the shortest route. So the moment it uses the Tanzanian route, the cost becomes high.
Doubled.
You almost 60% higher, and other commodities, wheat and all that. So, but the most important thing to note is that we have been crying for the integration every day. We talk of integration as East Africa. So, such kind of surprise as a comrade talked of Odinga coming up, we need to have leaders who concede defeat. We have had that in ANT, like our leader, Muntu. He conceded defeat. Where he was in FDC. Those are the leaders we have, who concede defeat and settle to do re-evaluation and do better for the common good of this country. So, whatever Odinga is doing is not living to the leadership qualities of a leader who, when two men, come to fight, one will lose. So if you lose, concede defeat, plan better, and that's what ANT does. And that's what we intend to do for this country.
So you people lost the election, and there is no issue that you can have to develop as anti.
Ouma, no new debates.
Please.
No new debates.
So you will know that we issued, it was a selection in Serere, and that's why I said, I mentioned that for Kenya, at least they advanced in their election. You didn't see arrests. We have not heard of the Kakwenzas. In Kenya, we have not heard of
10 seconds
of all those things.
No.
So for the record, I just pray that it doesn't go worse in Kenya to affect our economy, our market and trade. But also, it's a caution to those who are in leadership across the East African community, within the East African community body, that let's not give birth and throw the baby with the bathed water. That's what we are doing in as far as integration is concerned. Today we sit here, endorse integration, the following day, even the citizens, not only the leadership, because the citizens also needed to know, to see the greater good of integration, that their action may in one way be an impediment to the integration, which would be to the benefit of the entire region. So
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Darren, in 30
Yes.
seconds.
Yeah. Me, what I should say is this, whatever that is happening in Kenya, like I said, is not leaving Uganda behind. Like my comrades have been saying, is trade is disrupted, peace, security, and maybe democracy. So as maybe we pray or maybe stand in solidarity with Kenya, let's remember that whatever is happening is affecting us. You know, we need maybe to, the integration, like you said, the ESC community, it's not only Kenya, it's not only Uganda, it's the entire Africa. This is literally like the 20th March in I think Africa or maybe Kenya, that it's happening, that people are demonstrating. So maybe we need, as Kenya carries on with their demonstration, we need also to sit back and revise our powers. Where does it leave us? Our benefits. We need also to evaluate where does it leave us, and as we do, let's put people over profit, because at the end of the day, it's people that we are representing, maybe that Raila or William are representing, that are really getting affected. So let's have people at the center of maybe these conversations and demonstrations. But I thank Civic Space so much, and Kidega for having me for this show. It was really a pleasure sharing a panel with wonderful men. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Ezra, your last words. Yeah.
My last words. Prince Metternich said, quoted that when France sneezes, the world catches cold.
Of course.
So, like, what is happening in Kenya, East Africa is worried. What is happening in South Africa under Julius Malema, Tunisia and others, Africa is worried. So, maybe we are not in tense situation, but we are a bit surprised. Basically, what we have discussed, it's our views, and we stand on those views for the betterment of the progress of this country. We hope for the best, and we thank this space for inviting us to discuss and put a stone on what is needed for the Ugandan youth to contribute to its country.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, comrades. JB, Nelson, Darren, and Ezra. Thank you for spending the time to be on this week's episode of the Youth Roundtable. And of course, to the technical team, Rashid and the rest, thank you for ensuring that our viewers get this show right on time. Well, not to spoil anything, you've had it all. Until next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.